welcome. This is our Marketing Your Event and Promoting Your Message webinar. I will be doing a lot of the talking today, but I've broken it up so that there are a few times where we get to engage with each other and I get to hear your feedback. But without further ado, let's jump right in. Today, we'll be talking about event promotion and what that entails. What is it? Why is it important? Additionally, we'll be talking through how to find your target audience and what that means. Then we will jump into promotional materials, maybe some tips for making them more accessible and engaging. And after that, how to build a marketing campaign. Lastly, the most important part is how to work within your budget when it comes to event promotion. At the end, I'll have some final takeaways, and then I'll leave some time for questions. But this is going to be a pretty interactive webinar, so feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar, and I'll keep an eye on the time just to make sure we're on track. But it's good if you need any clarifying, or if you need any clarification, feel free to interrupt with the hand raising function. So let's kick things off with an exercise. So you'll need either your phone to access the internet, or you need a new tab on your computer to access the internet. Either one will work. But for this exercise, on the next slide, I will be featuring a famous painting. Your goal is to find the name of this painting by using keywords. So in your tab, you're going to find a search engine, whether it's Google or Yahoo or Bing. And in that search engine, your job is to use a combination of words that you will think will lead to this painting's title, whether it's in an article or it pulls up the Google image and it has the name underneath. My example is that if on the next page I show you the picture of the Mona Lisa, you would type into Google, famous female portrait, and hopefully an article would lead you right there. That would be too easy. So the next one is going to be a little bit more of a challenge than Mona Lisa. If you do know the painting's name, you can still participate in this exercise, and you're supposed to keep track of what words you used to get that picture to pop up. So that's all that's important is what are the word combinations you use to get to that painting's name. Any questions before I show us our mystery painting? Okay, let's do it. I'll give you all about 1 minute. Oh, I do have something in the chat. How fun. Great, thank you, Eleni. So here we go. Here's our painting. Again, if you know the name, still participate in the exercise and see if you can get this painting to pop up. Just have 1 minute. Go around, I see lots of people searching. Good, good. Okay. About 30 more seconds. Oh, thank you, Amanda. The name, yes, next time, let's hold off just until we're done, but that's okay. It's not even necessarily about the name, but everybody feels good. We found it. That's okay, Amanda. I didn't clarify ahead of time. So, yes, so let's pause. Ding, 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 time's up. We're going to reveal the mystery title. Ta-da! It is Whistler's Mother. Also, more formal name would be Arrangement in Gray and Black #1. So, anybody would like to share, either they can unmute themselves or drop their information in the chat, but I would like to know what combination of words that you used to get to this painting. So anybody, I'm seeing famous painting of woman facing curtain. Yes. Women in chair, famous painting. These are all very similar. Anybody else have any other words? Chair. Great. I'm seeing dressed in black. Okay. Everybody had pretty similar word searches. We're going to do this exercise one more time with a new painting. Again, let's hold off on those the reveal of the name, especially because this next painting might even be more unfamiliar to folks. And then again, we will sort of share what our magic word searches were. So here's our next painting. Go ahead and use your keywords. Try to find the name. And I'll give you a minute and a half because it might take you just a tad longer, maybe. Still seeing people with eyeballs down, so I'm thinking we're still looking. Okay, 30 more seconds. Okay. Final chances and time. All right. So did anybody, was anybody not able to find this photo? If you could not, Jacob says, I couldn't find it. I'm seeing Christian and Amy, lots of people could not find it with those keywords. Liz didn't find it. So yes, a lot trickier. Nana, Caitlin, wow. So for those of us that did find it, I searched Van Gogh. Yes, Sarah could recognize the artist, which does help in terms of keywords. But yes, let's start sharing what we use to find La Bercuse is how I had to Google the pronunciation, but that is the name. And it is a Van Gogh painting of all things, you know? Great. Okay, so we have some famous painting of woman in green flowers, green, red, daisy painting, Impressionism, woman, Gauguin. Is that how you say that? Van Gogh lady. Okay. Woman in chair, floral background, hands clasped. So this is very interesting. You know, we have a lot of keywords, a lot of good word searches, but for some of us, we didn't get that perfect, we didn't get enough of the combination of words to associate with this painting. So as you feel free to continue to drop your word associations, but I'm going to move us along to the reflections. Now, both of these paintings featured a similar scene with a woman wearing a dress while seated in a chair. Despite the fact that Van Gogh is the more famous of the artists, Whistler's mother is associated with more keywords, and it was easier to find that on the internet. So the reason that I developed this exercise and presented it to you all is because the goal that I wanted to demonstrate was the power of an impression. We often forget the names of people, places, and things, but with the right keywords, we can find the answer. And this is important when we talk about event promotion because we want our event to be easily found. So getting those keywords, getting things associated with your event can actually be a huge asset to when it comes to getting the word out there because people don't have to know the exact name or who's putting it on. They just need those associative words and they can type it into the internet and hopefully that will help them find what they're looking for. But we'll talk about a lot of different elements of event promotion. And before we do that, let's break it down. What is it? So event promotion is how you get the word out about your event. And usually you'll do this through different marketing strategies. If you were to look up event marketing, that is actually a separate subject. Event marketing is usually when a company uses an in-person or virtual event to help launch a product or to provide, access to their services. Event marketing is a strategy that or marketers use versus event promotion is for everybody. Event promotion is just how you get your word out about your event. Just for clarifying. But why does this matter? So what is the point of putting together an event if no one shows up? Kind of like that phrase we use, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, that's kind of why event promotion is a big deal. It's how you drive people to your business and your community. But bigger than that, event promotion helps people get a better impression of your business and organization. Thinking back to the keyword exercise, if you're trying to develop your business association, the more events that you are a part of and those things that they're associated with, the better your keyword search is in the internet. So trying to think about event promotion as larger than just one event, but something that can really influence how people think of you. Before we get into any promotional materials, let's talk through target audiences. So a target audience is a group of people characterized by specific demographics. And these can be as general as people who live in Portland, but they can also be extremely specific, like extreme hikers. That involves like a behavior and a demographic piece of information. And when you're planning on throwing an event, it's important to know who your target audience is way before you start talking promotional materials and marketing strategies. So how do we figure out this target audience? Well, first you got to identify who you want to attend your event. And the more specific you are, the bigger the difference is for how you strategize your marketing. So a general approach of this event is open to families may build a different approach than if you go with new families that are families that are new to the St. John's area. So being specific about your target audience will influence how you strategize your promotional materials and which marketing approach you're going to pursue. So after we've identified the audience, it's important to figure out what they're interested in. Again, this is going to influence how your messaging and your promotional materials. You want the audience to resonate with your wording. So for, again, that extreme hiker group, you might be using language that appeals to the outdoor community, like sustainability, zero waste. Very different lingo than just a fun and free event for the public. That's going to attract families and the average user. Now, after you've figured out the interest, it's a good idea to deep dive into some research behind your target audience, specifically about how they get their news and how they find events. So figuring out what websites do they use? Do they read the newspaper or watch cable television? For some of our newer generations, the newspaper and cable TV is just not something that they access a bunch, and it might not behoove you to spend time and money in those outlets. So being very thorough with your research can help you figure out, again, what marketing approach is the best for your event. And last but not least, you want to grow your reach. You want to be able to access your target audience so that through your promotion, you can figure out if this marketing strategy was actually the right approach. So once you figure out what they're interested in and how you're planning on marketing to them, you'll need to figure out how you will evaluate that growth. This can be with, how many people clicked on the link, how many people registered and submitted their RSVPs, or it can be how many tickets did they buy. All of these things will track that growth and whether or not your marketing strategy was a success or if it needs to be tweaked before the next event. Okay, any questions about target audience? Great. Caitlin, you had your hand raised from a previous exercise. I think we're still good. I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay, great. So now we have our second exercise. I told you it would be doing quite a few. So Prosper Portland and Mercatus PDX teamed up in March to throw a networking event. They each promoted it on their Instagram. I'm going to show both of their captions in the next slide. And your goal is to describe their target audience based off the captions they wrote. You can include who you think they're marketing towards, but also potentially what the target audience's interests are based off of what you're reading. That makes sense to everybody? Okay, feeling good? So let's see. Here are the two captions, and I'll give you a couple minutes to read them through. Feel free to jot down some notes. About 30 seconds or a minute. All right, as you finish up with your analysis, I would like to invite one person to speak about what they noticed from the Mercatus caption and who they think the target audience is. So if I could get a volunteer to unmute themselves and just talk about what they're noticing, that would be really helpful. Who's brave enough? There's no bad answers. Anybody feel? Awesome, thank you. Is that Rich? Awesome. Uh-oh, sorry.
Oh, did I break up there?
Just a little bit. I think okay, I'm also, sorry. Whoa, here we go. Sorry about that.
Are we back on board? All right. Okay, I was just saying you're doing a great job here today.
Thank you.
My perception on the Mercatus side is that they're really just going for small and micro business owners.
Okay.
And, you know, and that possibly hungry ones because they were talking about food.
Yes.
And obviously ones that want to grow.
Very good. Thank you, Rich. Yes, I do think that the Mercatus highlighted the food. I picked that up too. Anybody else have any other notes that they'd like? Eleni says also women in the chat based off of that Women's History Month. Any other descriptions about that target audience or what they're interested in? Feel free to, if you are more comfortable in the chat, feel free to do that and I will voice your observations. Okay. Frank B says 20s to 30s based on the fact that it's Instagram. And Liz also says that the Mercatus people are interested in networking and marketing. These are great observations. The other, yes, Liz just brought up the other thing that I wanted to mention is that Mercatus really uses a bunch of hashtags. They're using hashtags and emojis. They're highlighting that free element really clearly. So I would agree that the Mercatus group really wanted to engage with brand new solo entrepreneurs, younger audiences, the inclusive, I love that, Mackenzie, that they wanted it to be open for all. And they wanted to make sure that they were highlighting that there was food and drink there. Let's switch gears and talk about Prosper. Now, this is the exact same event, but I would argue that this is a different approach to how they marketed it or what target audience they're after. Anybody feel like unmuting and sharing what they noticed about Prosper? Okay, oh darn. Oh, apologies for my temporary white screen. There we go. Okay. Anybody feel like, Mackenzie?
I can jump in first. I feel like this one, and not that it's good or bad, but it's very like businessy, the way that it's coming across. I noticed that there isn't a use of emojis. It's not as free focused necessarily that I can see, or I guess it's kind of registration is free via the link, but it's the last thing. It doesn't necessarily pop out in any way. And then use of hashtags aren't necessarily being used, which is just totally different than the first example.
Right. Thank you. Yes, Mackenzie hit on some of the things that I noticed as well. If you'd like to also drop some of your observations in the chat, I will read those aloud. But yes, being very structured, I think that breaking down what each room is going to have inside of it, the times, giving that agenda, it's going to be a lot more appealing to somebody who is a long-term business owner, or somebody who is limited on time and they want to be sure that they're using their chunk of time wisely. Let's see what else has been talked about in the chat. So Kelly says there is more information here and would help a business person see if this is a networking event for them, versus the Mercatus one, which was a little bit more, ambiguous in terms of what would the event look like. Eleni thinks that it doesn't look fun or enticing to attend. It seems more like a class. And then not as compelling. We're getting a lot of people saying this is not nearly as compelling as the Mercatus program. Prosper seems to be more specific about the benefits and the topics. And one will be more casual and fun networking event and the other more formal. These have been some really great observations. You have all hit it out of the ballpark. And really, the whole goal of this exercise was to point out the fact that these are the exact same event. But because we have so much power over our tone, our messaging, and ultimately how we appeal to the target audience, it's impacted how they've written their caption. So I encourage you to think through every piece of communication when you're talking about your event, just because you can see that depending on what you write, so many people get so many different points of view. Any questions about target audience before we move on? Excellent. Okay, now we're all experts. So next up, we have promotional materials. Now, we just talked through the power of the message and, the tone, but I have some tips about promotional materials that seem relatively basic, but actually make a huge difference between a straightforward message and a convoluted, muddy one. So here are some tips to make your content more engaging and accessible. Number one, make the most important information the most visible. This makes a lot of sense. You want the who, what, where, when, and why easily figured out, but this doesn't mean that it has to be the largest on your poster. It could mean that you've centered the information so that your eye naturally goes right to the middle of the page. It could mean that you've bolded it or added a bright color so the eye naturally is drawn to where it is. But the thing you don't want happening is that your viewer, your audience is looking or searching for that information. So make sure that that is the most eye-catching element. Secondly, you're going to want to use language that appeals to the target audience's interest. This is where you can pop in the words fun, free, and that'll, again, help people understand what type of atmosphere you're going for and leave them with that impression that then kind of lingers in their brain, even if they can't remember the event name itself. Third, you're going to want to commit to a look and stick with it across channels and platforms. I've seen amazing events use multiple different flyers and graphics, and while it's exciting to see that level of creativity, it also kind of creates, again, this mixed message of what is involved in the event and potentially who's throwing it. Sometimes you'll have promotional materials where one will be really clean and nice, and then suddenly you think that's the event organizer or the planner. So I encourage people that, especially if you're using a bunch of different vendors, to just try to get them to get a uniform look across channels, so that you're getting instantly, the audience gets that impression and it's not getting mixed up in their brains. Fourth, you want to make more information easily available. So any type of wordiness, like an explanation about what the event is going to be, an agenda, who's performing, can include that on a flyer, but I always prefer a visible website link, or a phrase that says find more information at our Instagram, or a QR code even, just so that you can continuously keep that that main flyer all about the most important stuff, and everything else can be easily accessed if they want to know. And then last but not least, all of the logos should look intentional and not an afterthought. This can be tricky, especially as you're getting partners added on as the event kind of comes together, but it's a huge problem if a sponsor or a partner feels like their logo isn't as thought out as the rest of the flyer. So just trying to, again, make it so that the association is instant, and that, if somebody just were to glance at your poster, they know that Prosper, Montavilla Business Association, and so on are the organizers and the partners. Very clear. Let's get into some examples. I've picked out these promotional materials from an event that happened last winter. Small Shops, Big Hearts. It was a virtual event that took place over the Black Friday weekend, and it involved 90 different businesses, and there were incentives to buy and get discounts through this event. And what I wanted to talk about with their promotional materials are some of the best things about them, and then some of the things that I think could be improved. First of all, I think that they did a great job making sure that the date is nice and visible and at the top. Down here on their little index card, they have the information on their website in the bottom right-hand corner. On their Instagram, they didn't have that, but they did have a link to more information easily available in their bio. And I like that, even though these two cards read differently, the one on the left says shop small, win big. The other one says small shops, big hearts. You can get the impression, and when you type into Google any combination of these words plus Portland, this is the event that will come up. So even if I don't really remember what the name is called, and I type in small shops, big Portland, it actually is one of the very, it easily generates in the search engine. So I think they've done a really good job making it so that the word order doesn't matter, but that the impression is still there. Does anybody else feel like they want to make any comments about this event promo? Liz says, I like the use of the tagline. Yes, be inspired, win prizes, and be in community. I think that does a great job of capturing, again, that target audience of both want to support local, but also people who like to win and do fun stuff. Any other comments before I switch over? Okay. So our next examples come from our community as well. I've picked a flyer from the Montavilla Business Association. And also I picked the upcoming St. John's Farmers Market. This one, I believe, is their most recent flyer. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, St. John's, but the Montavilla one is from a previous event. Excuse me. And the things that I really enjoy about both of these is that they kind of highlight two different ways you can still focus on the most important information while utilizing different, different aesthetics and different uses of positive and negative space. So for the Montavilla Plaza one, you have a lot of white space, but I think they've done a great job highlighting those sponsors at the bottom so that it's seamless with their nice dancing graphic. They've also really kept that information nice and center so that I know it's Saturday at 3 and Sundays at 1. They don't have the date. So obviously this would be something that when I was looking in the past, I was like, oh, is this upcoming or is this already happened? But in general, I think that this is a really good example of just keeping things simple and then using colors to really attract the viewer. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback as well, that these are fun, so vibrant, clean, and visually attractive. Meanwhile, at the farmers market flyer, which we confirmed is from this year, thank you, Liz. The farmers market is a little bit busier. I would say that there is a lot more going on, but what they do that's so great is they keep the center really clean and thoughtful. It's hard to read at this size, mind you, but just that big, bold farmers market in the center, and underneath would be the date and location. Similarly, they did a great job putting the partners at the bottom so that they're very clear and highlighted. St. John's flyer even has your little Facebook and Instagram links in the bottom right-hand corner. And then, of course, we have to highlight that this has also been translated in English and Spanish, and it still manages to not be too confusing for the viewer, for the audience, and in general, just really sort of shows how inclusive, how fun, and how energetic this event will be. Some last minute comments are, Sarah pointed out that there is an apostrophe in the Montavilla flyer, so it could be Saturdays at 3, but it is, I think that is a typo. And then Kelly mentions that St. John's is showing inclusive and that dogs are welcomed, and it could be cool to have a QR code to the main site. These are all really great feedback points, and helps us think about how 2 different flyers can look totally different, and yet they all sort of emulate the fun of these community-based events. Okay, so another exercise, surprise, surprise. So what we're going to do next is I will show you some promotional materials, and I would like you to answer the following bullet points. Jot down just the basic who, what, where, when, and why. Feel free to try to guess who the target audience is of the event, of the promotional material. Who are the event partners, if any? And then finally, this will be the most important part, and the part that we will share is, what is this event about in your own words? Any questions before I show us our first picture? I'll keep the bullet points will be on the next slide as well. Okay. Peeking at the chat. Great. Here we go. So this is not from Portland. This is a Kentucky flyer. And your goal is to answer the bullet points and highlight especially that last one for me. Give you all a minute or so. Oh, sorry. My bad. Little reveal, the next one. All right, maybe 30 more seconds so that you can keep deciphering. Okay. So, as you can see, I've picked a very interesting flyer. This is all the way back from June 2nd, 2012. So I'll give it, I'll just gentler on it since it's almost, it is 10 years old. But I picked this flyer obviously because it is very convoluted. The who, what, where, when is all over the place. It makes it very difficult to know what to focus on. The target audience, I guess, anybody have any suggestions for who they think would attend or hope to attend? Music, food, beverage community, says Hillary, but also that makes my eyes hurt. Yeah, I think it doesn't really come across as like a very intentional sort of target audience. Instead, it's kind of anybody who's into, right, yes, ham radio folks. That's, I noticed that as well as a theme. And who are the event partners? I can't tell you. I'm like Pennington Folk Music Festival, maybe. Some of these radio channels on the side here. But honestly, I don't see any sort of like highlighting of event partnership, radio club. Now for the last question, if you would like to unmute yourself and try to put into words what Hamfest is, that would be pretty entertaining. So anybody feel brave enough to try to articulate Hamfest 2012? Nobody is willing. Nobody wants to try to tell me what this event could be. Liz says it's a ham radio swap meet. I did see that in this upper right hand corner. I don't know. Oh, I don't know what the swap meet is. Boy. Okay, well, without further ado, I think we can all agree that Hamfest did not do a very good job in terms of trying to articulate what it entails, what will be there, who should attend. So an example of what not to do when it comes to an event flyer. As you have already seen, here is our second flyer. Let's go ahead and jot down some of the bullet points, or just sort of think through to yourself. But this is an older Portland Night Market flyer. Eleni, I think that's about as good as we'll get with the Hamfest description. All right. So since we're chugging right along, I'm gonna just sort of hold off on any sharing about the Portland Night Market and instead really jump to that last question, which is, what is the event about in your own words? For me, this market is pretty clear in terms of that it has a bunch of pins, patches, decals, tote bags, all of these goods that it's going to be either selling or has there. It says, come hang out, so it seems pretty casual, many boss gifts. It really fits the bill of a market. So for me, I think that it's a pretty straightforward flyer that really highlighted the dates and times, especially with different days and different times, and the location. And then it just kept it nice and simple, but clean with that pretty city skyline and then the moon. So really well done job to the Portland Night Market team. All right. I talked about target audiences and promotional materials. The next thing that you'll want to do is build a marketing campaign. Event promotion is most successful when utilizing multiple marketing strategies and channels. This is called a marketing campaign. The ultimate aim of a marketing campaign is to increase awareness for your event, but there can be other goals as well. So the next thing that I'll jump into is, what's the best approach and how should I go about building a marketing campaign and structuring my limited budget or my big budget, depending. And therefore, the right approach to your marketing will depend on your event promotion goals and budget. If your goal is to drive attendance, especially if this is a district-specific event, then utilizing your existing marketing channels, such as social media and mailing listings, that might be the most effective approach. So my goal isn't to sway you to download all these different apps and start, building a website. I think that it's really just about looking back at what is your goal with these promotions and is it, within the budget. So here are some examples of goals and strategies. Now, marketing campaigns, like I said, usually involve many different strategies. So this would be one approach to gaining that goal. For instance, gaining public awareness. One strategy could be that you promote your event on websites like PDX Pipeline, Ever Out Portland, Eventbrite, Portland on the Cheap, and Travel Portland. All of these are websites that involve an event calendar, and these event calendars are accessible to anybody who types in the URL or has access to the newsletters from those sites. And they're often a more affordable option if you're just trying to raise public awareness than something like print ads or TV space. Then a different goal, separate from gaining public awareness, is you want to increase event registration. Maybe you're trying to get your event registration up before your event even starts to see how much interest you're gaining. So one thing you could do to help improve that is to activate your audience by offering incentives such as for early registration, such as an early bird discount, 25% off if you get your tickets now versus at the door. Similarly, you could encourage attendees who have already registered to spread the word by offering prizes or promo codes for the most referrals. So thinking through how you can use activations to get more registration. This is a different goal than just, driving attendance. So it involves a different approach. And then last but not least, you get the goal is to reach a new target audience. So this would be slightly different than just a public awareness. This would be, I want to go after one specific group. And maybe your approach is that you create a social media hashtag that will resonate with the target audience that you aim to reach. And then you track its usage across platforms to see if you're actually reaching that target audience. My example is if I was trying to target online only business owners, maybe I start getting excitement around the hashtag Portland Online. This was just a random hashtag that I made up, but again, if I made that hashtag on any of the platforms, I can go into my analytics and see how many people clicked on it. Or you could just search for the hashtag and see how many people have been posting about it. This is going to be how you track if you're actually reaching the target audience or if you need to just change approaches and start somewhere else. Okay. So I have some other marketing ideas. When it comes to TV, radio, and print media, a lot of times the local outlets have a media liaison, somebody who is going to be able to tell you more about how much ad space costs, or if they're, and give some insights on how they cover local community events. But one thing that I think is something you can do proactively, even if you're not getting replies from that local outlet, is you can send them an event press release. And this press release would describe when your event is happening, where it's happening, and why it's newsworthy. So an example is, new market arriving soon in Lents. Something that is going to attract the attention of a journalist so that they can come and cover it. The other thing is that you can visit, or you can specifically invite journalists and photographers to cover your event. This is a great way, again, to get that content or just to continue marketing even during your event. It's not just before the event, it's also during. The other thing is event pop-ups and networking, partnering with other event producers so you can pop up at their event and vice versa is a great way to network for your event, especially if they're not in competition with each other. Similarly, offer to promote each other online. Utilize more established events to help gain your reputation, especially if you're brand new. And then last but not least, user-generated content. So most of your attendees will generate some sort of digital content when they attend your event, whether they mention you in their stories, they share pictures, they post about you. All of this is user generated and it's free promotion. Your job is to reward the attendees by interacting with it, making sure that they, get a repost if they've shared about you, or you can comment on their posts. But basically, user-generated content is a wealth of material for you to use to highlight your successes. And in a 2016 study, they showed that 98% of attendees made some sort of digital content at the event. So I'm telling you, make sure you activate that audience while they attend your event. Awesome. Sarah says, You can also share a specific event hashtag for attendees to use on social media. Again, this is such a good way of integrating multiple strategies. Hashtag, but then activating the audience by encouraging them to use it. Great comment, Sarah. So the final piece of the event promotion conversation is the not fun piece, which is the budget. Oftentimes when I'm working with a business association, they inform me that they just don't have a lot of funding when it comes to event promotion. So I would say that if you're working with no budget or a minimal budget, consider your time as the second most valuable thing. Your time is an essential piece to event planning, but also event promotion. So one strategy to getting the word out there could be flyering around town. But that is extremely time consuming as somebody who has physically hung up posters before. Unless you have a bunch of help, it's hard to hit every part of Portland. But building a website or a landing page, if you're not an expert coder or app user, it can also be time consuming. So the question is what's going to be the best way to let people know about your event that doesn't cost you a lot of time? Oops. And just the last part about the time piece is just making sure that, like, even if you build a website, that's going to house all those cute questions and answers that you don't have to spend time, emailing back as a response. So it's really weighing out how to best utilize your time. Meanwhile, if you have a good sized budget, this is where you're going to want to spread that budget out across marketing strategies. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And before you spend any of that money, be sure you know how you're going to track the success or failure of that approach. So thinking back to, am I tracking clicks? Am I looking at how many pre-registration people that have registered before the event? And ticket sales? All of those are different ways to evaluate. And the things you could spend your money on if you do have a good size budget is buying ad space in print media or using the boost function on social media posts to get your post more views. These are two things that can be strategic usage of your budget so that you get more eyes on your event. But there's lots of ways to spend money. And if you're somebody who has a flexible or a large budget, this is when I really encourage folks to think long-term about your marketing strategy and your overall goal with how you want to be remembered. So this is where you can consider, hiring a web designer to create a landing page for your event. You could invest in a video project that will air on the evening news. These are going to be heavier lifts, but can provide way longer rewards depending on how you utilize them. So consider the budget as not necessarily parameters, but it's just how you effectively use the money or use your time. Any questions about budgeting? I have a whole video on YouTube currently about how to prepare an event budget. So if you would like more of an in-depth, breakdown on that, you can head over to the YouTube page after this webinar. Awesome, we're doing great on time. Our final exercise, I know you are all super excited about these exercises. So let's answer some trivia questions. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. So what percentage of attendees said that they have a more positive opinion about the company, brand, product, or service being promoted after the event? Go ahead and drop your guesses into the chat if you'd like to see if you're right. Oh no, well, 84%. There you go. Apologies for my quick clicking fingers. That seems to be what I'm doing. Yes, so 84% of attendees said that they had a more positive opinion of the product and the company after the event. So again, in-person events or virtual events affect your impression and affect your overall how people think of you. So this next one, I won't reveal the answer. I'll use my arrow keys. Oh, they don't work? Great. Here we go. Not going to touch it. Answer the following trivia questions. The global event management software market was valued at $6.63 billion in 2018. What is the projected value of the EMS market by 2026? Might have some marketing people here. 10 billion, says Eleni. 9 billion, okay. Guesses are coming in. 1 trillion, says Amy. Is it like Price is Right, where you can't go over? Any other guesses before I reveal? This is according to Fortune Business Insights. 16.11 billion. So over 10 billion dollars they think it's going to grow by. And event management software is what it sounds like. It's how event planners and organizers keep track of all their details. So that's just one piece of the event puzzle, but I thought it was a really interesting statistic, because even with COVID, it seems like the trajectory of event management is on the up and up. So, all right, our final question, and then your turn to ask questions. Answer the following question. Event planners listed blank as the most effective tool for event marketing, followed by blank and their blank. It's extra hard because it's the last one. Event planners listed blank as the most effective tool for event marketing, followed by blank and their blank. If you just want to answer the first one as what is the most effective tool, feel free to drop that in the chat. Social media, then followed by television, followed by website, says Jacob. Social media, okay, I'm seeing lots of social media, and then email, says Eleni, and then website. Website last, says Frank, okay. Last minute guesses. Media. All right, here's the reveal. Eleni got it. Event planners listed social media as the most effective tool for event marketing, followed by, excuse me, email marketing, and then finally their website. And I'm actually going to show you the graph that EventMB published in 2018. Check it out. So this was taken from a pool of event marketers and planners, and you know the first three, but I think that it's interesting too that a registration site can be useful in terms of event promotion. Printed media, influencer marketing, got to get those influencers to come to your event and take promotional content. And then experiential marketing, video, press releases, live streaming, blogging, remarketing, which I had to Google, which is when you basically get targeted ads based off of what you clicked. That's called remarketing. And then bespoke landing pages, don't know what that is, and podcasts. So there's quite a range of approaches, but I liked that most of us understood the power of social media. All right, so with my last 3 minutes, I have just a few takeaways, and I've kind of covered all of these already, so I won't linger too long, but really clear communication is a huge part of event promotion. You have to get everybody on the same team when it comes to how to talk about your target audience, what tone you use, and what you're going to be using for communication pieces. You need trackable metrics, so more than one way to figure out if your promotion efforts were successful. Attendee satisfaction, while is very helpful, it happens after your event already takes place, so it's a harder piece of data to present to sponsors and partners. Again, I encourage you to use multiple different metrics, and then cover all your bases. I want to highlight again that it is good to use the tools that you already have to promote your event, in addition to new marketing channels. So, low hanging fruit is just as tasty as the ones at the top. So making sure that you are using mailing lists and social media that you already have before you overwhelm yourself by trying many different strategies. Those are my final thoughts. I will end it here with some questions. The last thing I will mention is that the Events Hub, me and Mackenzie, are here to help build a marketing campaign with you. We can provide resources if you're feeling unsure about making a graphic. And we're really just trying to make sure that your next event promotion is your most successful one. So reach out to events@ventureportland.org and ask us, hit us with whatever you're working on, and we'll try to be as helpful as possible. Thank you, and I will leave you all to ask any questions that you might have. And the screen. With our last minute, does anybody have any final thoughts? How'd I do? Oh, thank you. I appreciate all the positivity. Thank you so much for attending. I can't wait to see you all again. And I hope you take these exercises and share them with anybody else. But thank you so much. Adios. Bye. Thank you.